In this scenario, we invested zero capital. What is it worth? $300,000. We just financed $257,500. You guys can go out and get a non-seasonal loan and cash out on the difference between the $300 and the $257,500. There are some banks that will actually let you do that. It's called a non-seasonal loan. Does everyone understand this?
I don't get what you mean by that non-seasonal loan.
Okay.
Like, don't you still own the house? How will you give you some equity back?
Okay. Let's say you just borrowed $257,500. All you're doing, you guys, you're financing the closing cost. Your out-of-pocket is very little. Okay? The property is worth $300. You just got a loan for $257,500. Typically, the bank wants you to season the title after 90 days. Okay? Some banks will actually let you borrow the difference without having to wait for those 90 days to become due. Because ideally, what you is you want to take the difference, let's say $40,000 as an equity line, not as a second mortgage, because a second mortgage you start paying principal and interest right away. As an equity line, you pay on what you use. Okay? Nowadays, if you have a good beacon score, and I go back to beacon scores because it is important. See, when you quit claim a property, you can have a bankruptcy in your credit report, and you can quit claim a property because you're not getting a loan. Yeah, you're just paying somebody else's. The mortgage stays under their name, the deed gets transferred over. If you don't pay the mortgage, guess whose credit gets affected? Theirs. But they're in foreclosure. They don't have too many options. So basically, if you borrow the equity, what would you want to do with this equity?
Sell it out?
No. You can borrow from it. Especially if it's your investment to buy something else. And typically, you would want to buy at least 2 properties with that 40 grand. How much money did we invest here? Nothing. If we have $40,000, you can buy yourself 2, 3, 4 properties. So, if you guys have equity in your property, for God's sakes, use it. What is it making you right now? It's not making anything. So, that's why we talked about leverage. You want to have enough properties that are worth $1 million, so if it goes up 10%, that's $100,000. That's more than most teachers and police officers and a lot of accountants and lawyers make. And South Florida has a tendency to increase in value a lot faster than other parts of the country. Why? Because look at our weather. We have beautiful weather all year long. So, any questions so far about this scenario?
So, are you saying that when you borrow $257,000, you use a $40,000 line of credit, when you keep saying no out of pocket, you're going to pay the $10,000 arrears plus your $1,200?
Okay.
Pay all of that out of your equity?
Okay. This is one scenario. Okay? Let's say that they agreed on the price of $250,000. The house is worth $300,000. They owe $200,000. They have $100,000 in equity. They owe $10,000 in arrears. Okay? Let's say you're Jane and he's John, and I say to you guys, okay, I'll offer you guys $250,000, and you guys are okay with that. You guys owe the bank how much? $210,000, right? 10 arrears, $200,000 first mortgage. This, by the way, is considered a senior lien. Okay? Any other second mortgages or any other mortgages against it, it's considered a junior lien. Okay? So I say to you guys, okay, I'll offer you $250,000. I'm going to raise the price to $257,500, but you guys are going to contribute 3% towards my closing costs. What's 3% of $250,000? $7,500. You guys are going to pay my closing cost, but you're still going to get the $250,000. Okay? $250,000 minus the $210,000 that you owe the bank, you're going to make $40,000. If this is your homestead and you lived in it for more than 2 years, what would you have to pay taxes on this 40? Nothing. Okay? So you guys are going to make 40. I'm going to get a property worth 300,000. I'm going to get it for 250, but I'm going to finance 257.5 because I want to minimize the amount of money I take out of my pocket. Because if it goes up, look, they say that you make money in real estate the day you buy the property. How much are you buying it if it's worth 300,000 and you just got it for 257.5? Like $43,000. Now you won't realize that money until you sell it or you borrow against it. How many of you guys are familiar with Rich Dad Poor Dad series? There's a gentleman in there that's called Dolph DeRoos. Okay? And I would recommend his course. And what he talks about is that you should never, never, ever sell your property. Why? Because if you have equity, what should you do with it? Borrow it. Borrow it and buy something else. So, you buy something else. Say, a year later, this has $50,000 in equity, this has $50,000 in equity. What do you want to do next? Keep borrowing. Keep buying. Okay, so you build yourself out. So in this scenario, what I'm presenting is the fact that you can have the seller contribute towards your expenses and out and get 100% financing. Now typically the way that lenders do 100% is that there's an 80% first and there's a 20% second. Okay? It's still 100%. Now the second mortgage is going to be a higher rate because it's a junior lien. But you get rid of private mortgage insurance. Okay? When you borrow more than 80% loan to value, you have what's called private mortgage insurance. Because this is 80% loan to value or less, you get rid of private mortgage insurance. So in this particular scenario, all I'm presenting is the fact that you could buy property with very little capital. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay? In this other scenario, what I was presenting is the fact that you can take over somebody else's deed by paying their arrears. Let's say the numbers are different. Let's say that they owe $250,000. I'm sorry, it's worth $250,000. They owe $200,000. So they have $50,000 in equity. Okay? They owe $10,000 in arrears. So you can quit claim the deed, transfer ownership of the $200,000 debt, and now you become owner of the property. If you want to, you give them something for their equity. Most people want something for their equity. They'd rather lose their house, lose their credit, than not get anything from their property. But in this scenario, if they lose at auction, guess what happens to their credit? It's like a bankruptcy. It goes bad for about 7 years. It's very difficult to finance anything with a foreclosure or a bankruptcy in your credit report. So in this particular example, all I'm showing is that you can quick claim the deed by paying $1,200 worth of doc stamps without getting financing, without putting down payment. This would be considered your down payment, $10,000 in arrears. And let's say that, they want $5,000 for their equity or $10,000. It's all negotiable. But the fact of the matter is that you can transfer ownership of title by filling out a form that's called a quick claim deed form. You need 2 witnesses. It has to be notarized. And it costs 0.06 per every 100 to record it. So I would record it or get it notarized before you actually reinstate it. And if it's a single individual, I would put Jane, a single woman. If they're married, then you have to put John and Jane. And you have to get them both to sign it. Okay? Any other questions?
The out-of-pocket money, is there like a typical out-of-pocket money that you can calculate when investigate the out-of-pocket should be around that?
In this particular example, your out-of-pocket is $10,000 plus $1,200. You're looking at about $11,200 plus whatever you want to give them for their equity. Sometimes you might not have to give them anything because John and Jane right now are pulling their hairs. They're like so stressed out. If you're not paying your mortgage, it's because things are bad. You're not paying the car. You're not paying the cell phone. This is the last thing that you don't want to pay. So it just depends. In this example, your out-of-pocket is going to be $11,200. Now that's because we're transferring ownership of the deed. We're not getting new financing. If you were to get new financing, you might be able to buy it with no money. But you would have to borrow more. So your monthly payments might be more. Basically.
What about the liens?
Good question. Let's say that there's a second lien lingering around here. Let's say that this first mortgage is with Chase Manhattan Mortgage. Okay? And then they had a second for $10,000. Okay? If you quick claim the deed, this $10,000 that's here as a second, this is considered a junior lien. This $10,000 is attached to the property. So you are responsible for paying that lien. So, disadvantage of buying at pre-foreclosure, you have to make sure that you do a title search. Okay? You have to make sure that there are no liens against it. If there are liens against it, then you can discount this lien. Okay? 20, 30 cents on the dollar, depending on what stage it's in. Because if this property goes to auction and they sold 2 plus 10,000, they're 210,000, and if it goes to auction and it sells for 210,000, what's remaining? Nothing. What do you guys think the second mortgage holder is going to get? Nothing. So it could be discounted in this particular stage because they might not receive anything if it goes to auction. Because it is a junior lien. The reason second mortgage rates are higher than first mortgages is because they take a bigger risk.
So you could potentially pay the second mortgage $3,000?
Absolutely. So when you ask me what would be your out-of-pocket, there's so many variables. Like right now we're looking at a second mortgage, and if we can discount it, to $3,000, would it be more advantageous